Hi, I'm Kara, life coach, wife, and mom to 4 incredible and unique children. It wasn't all that long ago that my son received a diagnosis that had my world come crashing down. I lacked the ability to see past the circumstances, which felt impossible, and the dreams I once had for my life and family felt destroyed. Fast forward past many years of surviving and not at all thriving, and you'll see a mom who trusts that she can handle anything that comes her way and has access to the power and confidence that once felt so lacking. I created the Special Needs Mom podcast to create connection and community with moms who find themselves feeling trapped and with no one who really understands. My intention is to spark the flare of possibility in your own life and rekindle your ability to dream. This isn't a podcast about your special needs child. This is a podcast about you. If you are a mom who feels anxious, alone, or stuck, then you are in the right place. Welcome. Hello and welcome to the Special Needs Mom podcast. Well, this episode was intended to be a community huddle episode, but guess what happened? I showed up to the party and nobody else came to play. And that might sound sad. Don't be sad for me. It happens. Actually, there was a handful of people that were going to be there and stuff happens. But I had already kind of thought through the conversation and I got pretty excited about it. So I did a little bit of a pivot and I ended up creating a solo conversation about the topic that I had planned. Now, the thing that was on my mind, the thing I proposed to the community to talk about was essentially looking ahead at summer, specifically creating a future that we could get behind. Looking ahead and not dreading it, and maybe a better way of saying it. I mean, I know it's on my mind that last summer was really difficult. We were coming right off of a really difficult spring with some medical challenges with Levi, and it led into the summer. We started off pretty strong, but we ended really in a tough spot. I ended in a tough spot. And if I'm honest, maybe I'm still recovering. And so that's why we're talking about it, is that the difficulty of it initiated me doing the very work that we're going to talk about today last year, putting things in place so that it could go very, very differently. So I'm going to break it all down, and it'll be a little bit more of a tactical conversation than we have sometimes, but rest assured, it'll be fun. We'll have a good time. And as always, as you listen, I want you to be thinking about your own life and how this applies. I also invite you to think about like where you get stuck, where you're like pushing, maybe resisting against what I'm saying or having reasons why it won't work. Those are such good clues to pay attention to. Consider that they're your roadmap to success. So not a problem. I would love to hear them. So please consider texting or reaching out and letting me know where you're getting stuck or where you're like, Kara, this is BS. Let's talk for reals. And I would say, yes, let's talk. Let's talk through it. I would love to hear it. Okay, so let's see. What are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about, there's so many different ways of saying this. And essentially, I don't know what I'm going to name the episode. One title I came up with that sounds corny, but I thought it was kind of funny, is Building the Future of Your Dreams. It sounds lofty. I know. But if I'm real honest, I do want you to be dreaming. And I do want you to have a future that you say, Kara, heck yeah, I want that. I want that for me. I want that for my baby or my babies. I want that for my husband. I want that for my dog. Like we all want that. We want something that we can look forward to, that we're not dreading. So that's really ultimately what this conversation is about. And so I'm going to guide you through steps. But before we get there, I want to give a little bit of a concept of essentially what do I mean by building the future? I mean exactly that. And the best example, I think, pulls from my first career. So for anybody that has not been around for quite a while, because I don't talk about it all that much, my first career was in landscape design and construction. So picture me with a hard hat, with plans in my hand, with this I was just thinking about this. I used to have really, really well organized project files. And I feel like it's the key to my success. I was very organized and I was a project manager. And so, picture me. I never wore boots, but, on the job, in the dirt, with the guys, usually the only lady on the scene. So I stuck out like a sore thumb, but I actually really loved it. What I loved is working with people, hearing what they wanted, what they dreamed of, and literally getting to build it with them. And so that building process is what I'm pulling from. And it's a really good thing to keep in mind, right? How do we build the future? First, we come up with a vision, a concept, even a functionality, right? So if I was building with, a backyard with somebody, okay, you want a barbecue, you want a fire pit, you want a pool, you want a jacuzzi, you want shade. You don't want any of that. It's all good. What do you want in the future? And this concept is a phase that you have to stay in possibility and in dreaming. I mean, we're going to be purely conceptual because this doesn't actually apply when you're talking about if someone said, I have $20,000 and they wanted all those things, I'd be like, let's live in reality. So that maybe isn't the best example, but I'm going to do this kind of lofty example of the building process just because I think it illustrates the concept. Is it perfect? It is not, but we're going to work with it. So first we start with a concept where we have a vision, where we see something and we say, yes, that's what I want. We dream of something. Like how cool would it be if I could go straight from the spa right into the pool, right? Something like that. Once we get this vision, then we have to start moving it into reality. And typically that's going to start with okay, how much would this plan cost? We're going to move into budgeting. We're going to look at some cost projections. We're going to do estimates. Along the way, probably even before that, we're going to do some architectural specifications. We're going to understand, what does it actually take to build that thing? And that, of course, is going to loop us back into cost estimates. So this whole process goes from concept to construction documents and essentially understanding what does it take to build this thing. Okay, well, now we know what we're building and now we know how we're building. And we're going to move into the future phase and we're actually going to start building it. Part of that is what I'm going to call the change order phase, where we recognize, we thought it was going to work this way, but it turns out it did not. And so we need to make a change. We need to actually do a little bit of a pivot and recognize what we thought would work did not, and we make a pivot. But at some point in the future, we will look and we will have a completed building or backyard, or in this case, project in our life. So there's this process of creating something that doesn't exist. That's really what I want to highlight. And where most people get stuck when we're looking at our lives is we start too early at looking at how we'll create something. And usually, almost always, we don't know how. That's the whole point. We don't know how. Since we don't know how, what happens right there, and I'm saying this with jest, but what happens right there is then dreams die right there. It's almost like it's like a fire that bursts into life and flame and fizzles out as quickly as it almost comes to life. So this first phase, all of us, I get stuck here too, is to not focus firstly on how. Intentionally, we're going to revisit the how later, but not until we get a crystal clear and compelling vision of the future, of the what we want to create. Again, this phase, I can't emphasize it enough, is that as soon as that how creeps in, I want you to consider that's like dumping poison on your dream. And you have to say, get away from me, poison. Stand back, because my dream is still bursting into life. And we don't need to know how just yet, because we're going to figure out how in the future, or along the way, I guess we should say. Also, I wanted to, as I go through the process, we're going to go through, I think I have a 6-step process. I want you to really be thinking about how and what you want in the future. So if you don't have anything that immediately comes to mind, I specifically timed this episode to where it's a really good time to start thinking about this, like for summer. I mean, it was time for me to think about this at the very end of last summer. So a year ago, well, 9 months ago, but you get it. But I want you to think about the summer, because there is certainly time to basically look ahead, dream up a future, and work to fulfill it. All right, now let's move back into step 1. So I think I've made it clear already at how important it is to not get stuck in the how. So this first step is the part where we look ahead and we dream. So for me, if I'll use my own life experience as an example, if I look ahead to this summer and I envision, and I'm looking specifically through the lens of Levi and his life and the support that he needs, and then of course how it commingles with my life. So I look ahead and I want to see Levi engaged. I want to see him active. Actually, it's like I picture him sitting on the couch. That's like his go-to. He has a spot on the couch where it is his comfort spot. It is where he goes. It is his default. But it's not a place where he is energized and full of life. So essentially, my vision is not having him there on the couch. That he's up and doing something, or at least at some other point in the house doing something, or out of the house doing something. That makes it possible for the whole family to have schedules and routines that kind of work with that, but they're not like conflicting with one another. So that's my dream and my vision of the future. And I know it's not crystal clear. It's actually not crystal clear in my own mind, obviously. And that's okay. I know enough. I know about enough of what we need or what I envision. And that's compelling for me, is to know, okay, I want him busy. I want him engaged. I want him to also go into the summer where he feels confident that it's going to be a good summer. So that's enough for right now. We don't have to have all the details because we're just in the future vision portion. Okay, but moving on to step 2. This is what I'm going to call evaluating the gap. So essentially, where are we now? Where are we starting? And essentially, what's the gap? What's between what we have and what we will have and what we will build? You can do this a couple different ways. One is you can create a list of all the things that would need to be in place or to happen to have your dream fulfilled. This is a little bit easier if you think about like something less about like designing your experience like in the summertime, and like, let's just say you decide you want a new house. You might list all of the things that would have to happen to have that dream fulfilled. So this, you can apply whichever one makes the most sense given what future you are building. Now, in my situation, I'm actually going to pull a lot of my learning from the past to differentiate or to determine what the gap is. And I'm actually going to do that through a process I call the evaluation process. And it's asking very simple questions and 3 very specific questions. And the 3 questions are, and I'm looking specifically at last summer, what worked, what didn't work, and what will I do differently? Or in this case, how do I want it to look different? So if I go back to last summer and I look at what worked about last summer, I would say one thing that worked majorly was having signed up for an oncology camp where Levi went away on his own for 6 days. And that was instrumental because it taught me how to prepare other people to care for him for 6 days. And it took a lot of trust. It took a lot of trust. And this particular group that cared for him nailed it. They're amazing. And we are thrilled to be sending him back again this year. So a shout out to Oncology and Kids here in San Diego. I know most of you don't share the cancer experience, but if you do have a child or know a child who that is their story or a sibling, I cannot recommend them enough. Okay, so that is something that majorly worked. A second thing that worked is that we went to Idaho for our family vacations. We drove out there. We went to see our very own Alex, who also happens to be the editor of this podcast and a dear family friend and previous nanny to our family. So we had a blast out there. We got to stay with her and her husband and her dogs, and it was really fun and adventurous and relaxing. And man, it stays late in Idaho in the summer. So we went to bed like so late every night. So I slept in like late every day. Thank you very much. Okay, so that worked. Now, you might notice that the list of what worked is pretty short. So we're going to move on to what didn't work. And oh, so many things. The one that makes me laugh the most was me signing Levi up for a class through like the Parks and Rec of our own city, Parks and Rec department, a class that he was interested in that was not designed for children with disabilities. And I did some due diligence, as in I talked to them ahead of time. I talked to the instructor. I explained his disabilities. And let's just say that we did not finish the week class. And we did have a conversation about how insurance would cover the damage on this particular historic building that happened. That was a rough conversation. I was so disheartened, and I'm laughing about it now because I can look back and be like, that was funny, but it actually was really hard at the time that I had really tried to set up something where he could have some independence, where I could have some independence, and it did not work. And it was really discouraging. So that didn't work. Now, other things that did not work is having unplanned downtime for Levi. What that means is having no plan. That did not work for me or for Levi. Also did not work is for me the pull of being primary caregiver and my professional life. So I didn't have as good of a structure as I did in previous summers for how this would go. And it didn't work. It kind of made me pulled in a couple different directions. And I ended up just feeling stressed. And what's it called when you're pulled in two different directions? Pulled. I felt stressed and pulled. Kind of connected to that, what else didn't work is not having a backup, right? So it was just me, myself, and I. My husband was at work for a lot of the summer. My oldest son, who was 16, 17 last summer, his birthday's in August, so he turns the next year older. He's turning 18 this year. I can't believe it. He was gone a lot of the summer. So he is very, very supportive to our family. He does a lot in terms of being an active participant in meeting Levi's needs. And so that was noted. I was the only one. Okay. And last one is, maybe I kind of said it before, but just not having enough or really anything for Levi to do or to be connected to. So it just was so glaringly apparent and in ways that is hard on so many levels. Moving on to the last question of the evaluation is, what will I do differently? So this is actually a question where I'm doing an evaluation, but it kind of cues me up for the next step. So what will I do differently? Plan much further in advance. So that's why we're having this conversation now. As I mentioned earlier, I really started in terms of creating the structures that I needed for more support. I started last August, right when he went back to school. I said, we can't do that again. We're starting now. And it's really cool to see things actually falling into place. So other things I will do differently, or I am doing differently, is develop a much wider support team. So no longer will it be me, myself, and I. It will be we. There will be other people, other adults, other capable adults that are able to support him and foster his own independence. This is an interesting one. One of the things as I did this evaluation that I put in here is what will I do differently is accept that he needs one-on-one support most of the day unless he's having like chill TV time. So he can obviously watch TV on his own. I shouldn't say obvious. It's not obvious for everybody, but he can sit on his phone and entertain himself with puzzles and probably buy things he's not supposed to buy. So he can do that. He can do all of those things and he doesn't need one-on-one support for that. But then I would have to accept that that will be all he's doing. So he needs one-on-one support to do really anything beyond that. So accepting that actually I think is really, really critical because I think it's something I have to kind of accept over and over again. And what else is on this list? I said I will be more generous with myself in terms of time off work. So I still haven't fully decided. I'm pretty close, but so my husband's a school administrator, so he's an assistant principal. And so he gets 3.5 weeks off in the summer, which is spectacular. But it's like the 3.5 weeks that is the most unhelpful to have him off. I mean, it's great. I'm not complaining. But end of July, August is really the challenging time because all of my kids are fully available and wanting, all the things that kids want. And my husband's at work. So that's where I'm really looking at, okay, so it doesn't really work for me to pretend like business is as usual when it's not. Like when I'm actually full-time caregiver because of the needs of my children, it's really going to have me look at how do I want to structure my work, my professional life, so that I'm not putting myself in a position where it just is not fun for anybody. And I want to mention, I have the flexibility because I work for myself and the financial ability to do that. And I know that some of you may not be in that situation. So for you, your list may look very different, but this is also, I want to go back to not getting stuck in the how. So I still don't know how. Let's put it that way. I don't know exactly how I'm going to manage to keeping my career going and being more generous with time off work, but I'm putting it out there so that I can start to figure it out. What would this look like? What could this look like? What does it look like to both support myself and support my kids? So that's what I wanted to point out here. So I will figure that out. Other thing, and this is a big one, what will I do differently? I will have hired help for transportation and supervision. So I guess this is the same thing as develop a wider support team. This is what it looks like. Actually having somebody that can drive and that can supervise and it's trained to supervise Levi. And I say supervise, really it's support Levi, coach him. And I will have a plan that I feel confident in. So I knew going into last summer that it was a little weak in terms of my plan. And so this summer I am committed to going in feeling like we've got a great plan. I want to go in feeling excited about it for all the opportunities that we will have. Okay, so that's a quick evaluation. I'm pretty sure I actually did an episode on doing an evaluation. So if I do remember correctly on that, we'll link to the episode if you want to geek out on that a little bit with me. But let's move on to what I am calling step 3. So we have step 1, we have the future vision that we have built. We have step 2, which is determining the gap. So all the things that basically we will do differently that we are creating to have our dream fulfilled. And this step is looking at all that and deciding the next step. Now, if you saw my notes, you would see that the word next is capitalized. Why? Because I did not say decide all the steps. I said just the next step. This is where most of us shift into overwhelm. We look at all that and we're like, whoa, that's too much, and I'm out. That is more overwhelming than just suffering through the summer. Hopefully I'm being a little dramatic, but I get it. It can get overwhelming pretty quickly because guess what? My guess is you're not doing this on a retreat island. Like you're doing this while you're juggling all the regular things of life, and it's already a lot. I know that. I feel that. So deciding the next step is designed to keep you moving forward, but not overwhelmed. It's also very helpful to decide the next step. So like if I look at all of these things that I'm saying I'm going to do differently, the most critical piece is hiring that person. That's my decision. That is the step that I'm going to be focused on and take action in. And so when I say hire the next person, okay, what's the next step? Okay, the next step for me in that is I just did this actually this last weekend, was to write a job description. I had to actually dust off my hiring skills. And actually, I'm thinking about doing an episode about this. I thought it would be kind of interesting. But I had to dust off my own process and wrote a job description. I used AI to help me write a job description. So I just muttered in my non-grammatically correct, like basically like, this is what I want the person to be able to do. I want them to drive this and that. I want them, to be able to coach him and all the things that I need this person to do. And they wrote a beautiful job description for me. And I posted that. I posted it on care.com. So that's where I was getting a little bit stuck on where to find the person. My hairdresser said, we found a great tutor on care.com. And I said, tutor, maybe I should consider going here. So to summarize, my own next step is to hire the person. And now that you can tell has many different steps within it. So I'm constantly in a dance, we'll call it, of deciding the next step and taking action. So actually step 4 is take action. And jumping ahead to step 6 is basically do step 3 and 4 over and over again. And so I have done that. And so it can be very, very helpful to look at what you have to do and isolating the singular most impactful or time sensitive action item and just asking yourself to do that. Now, step 5 is kind of maybe it's like a 4A. Maybe it's instead of step 5, it's step 4A. It's predicting where you might get stuck. Now, I actually have an episode coming out that's going to address this in a much higher detail. But in that episode, I'm talking about getting support or having structures that are sufficient to your resistance. In other ways, helping yourself where you need help, getting the help that you need to do the things that you want to do. And so a lot of times we can actually look at ourself and recognize where we usually get tripped up. Again, predicting where we might get stuck. Now, if I look at my own summer project, where I can predict that I'm going to get stuck is hiring this person. Why? It feels complicated. There's a lot of moving parts. It feels hard. It feels tricky. I feel like, how do I find this perfect person? Or how do I even know that they're going to keep Levi safe? All of these questions. There's a lot of questions. So it'd be very, very predictable to do a little spinning out and a little non-moving forward in this stage. And so this is where what I have learned to do, and I'm hoping that I'm going to support you in learning to do, is to support yourself at a higher level. So that looks like for me, what I'm doing in this situation is I'm going to be meeting with somebody called an independent facilitator that I'm going to use to help me through the process. So I'm going to use this person who has more experience than I do, and I'm going to use this person to ask questions and to give advice for where I feel like I'm stuck. So that part is very, very important to recognize that there are some challenging parts to fulfilling on this dream that we have ahead of us. And so not pretending like they're not there, but rather really looking at them, acknowledging them, and finding ways to meet yourself where you need to be met. So like I mentioned before, step 6 is decide the next step and take action over and over again. So this is where in an ideal situation, I would have told you to like write out your future vision, maybe even make a really cool like vision board. There's a million different ways to do this, but to really actually have something that you can visualize like with your actual mind. I was going to say eyeballs, but it's actually your mind. It's not your eyeballs. So something that you can actually envision and that you can see so that when you check in and say, okay, well, what's the next? You're able to break it down piece by piece to do the thing. One of the pictures that I wanted to share with you, or visuals, is that as I sit down at my desk, so actually that's where I record as well. So I'm there right now. Many times when I feel, gosh, there's just so many things to do, I sometimes even have a hard time deciding what the most important thing is. I literally picture myself. I was never a football player, so I don't know why this is the picture, but there's, if you like picture like football players at football practice and they have those like dummy thingies that like they all run against and like push and they kind of keep their legs moving. And sure enough, like it finally budges. So I picture myself not so much ramming into the thing, but I picture myself just like moving my feet. Just keep moving, even if it's something that maybe it's not that important that I do, just to move on something so that sure enough, eventually the big things budge. I like that picture. And I think for me, it's, it shouts to like progress made, because recognizing that sometimes it's just, just allowing ourselves to be where we're at is fine, right? The whole point is not to do this perfectly. The whole point is to be moving towards where you want to go. Said in another way, to have the experience in life that you want to have. And I would say most of you want to have more joy, more peace, more rest, more fun. And so that's where we're declaring we are going. That's the building that we are building. All right. So while this wasn't a huddle episode like I planned, it was fun for me because I got to think about being with you all. And I really like that. And I hope you're leaving feeling more hopeful that you have some access points to do your own version of the football thingy and to move towards where you want to be. And if you feel stuck still, no problem. I am here for you. We are here for you. So actually there is a community inside the Pathway to Peace coaching community. And this is the work that we get to do together. So I think it's safe to say you all know I am a big fan of not doing this alone. Together is the only way. And so I really want you to consider, if it's not in Pathway to Peace, where is the community where you're going to be doing this work together? I want you to just make sure you have something. That's what I implore of each of you. Okay, well, I think I was pretty excited about that. And maybe I talked too fast. And so you'll forgive me, I hope. I think you will. If you have any questions, if you have any feedback, please use the text the show feature. I'd love to hear from you. Honestly, it's so encouraging. I don't get very many texts from y'all, but when I do, I feel real excited about it. So thank you for those of you who take a second to tell me what the episodes are meaning to you, what is helping you, and what you want more of. All right. And with that, with lots of care, I will see you on the next episode.